Why not lead and say abolish ICE?
I don't understand anything that you just said.
The acting director of ICE went on television and threatened me with jail.
Shouldn't Democrats stop taking money from AIPAC?
Well, listen, everyone's going to have to make their individual decision.
There needs to be an opening in the discussion of what is happening in Gaza and towards the treatment of Palestinians and the crackdown of the freedom of speech of individuals who are trying to change the world for the better, for the basic respect of human rights, dignity, and to end the blockades, to end the genocide.
I promise you, we're going to come back to those clips because they were very, very entertaining. But I just wanted to start with a small taste of them side by side because I think that the stark contrast illustrates, at least to me, why both of those politicians should be in two completely different parties. Because while they both might agree that Trumpian fascism is bad, their solutions couldn't be more different. AOC wants to abolish ICE, whereas Jeffries, the so-called leader of the Democratic Party, merely wants to reform the Gestapo. AOC doesn't take AIPAC money, and she's willing to call Israel's slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza a genocide, whereas Jeffries takes lots of AIPAC money, and he denies that it's a genocide, and on top of that, he literally holds hands with Christo-fascists while pledging fealty to said genocidal state.
We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel.
Inspiring, isn't it? I just can't seem to figure out why the Democratic Party's popularity hit a 35-year low last year, even as Trump was starting to destroy the country. It must be because, they're not moderate or pro-Israel enough. But my sarcasm aside, I really find it obnoxious that we are still having this conversation in 2026 about what direction the Democratic Party should go in when the answer is obvious and it's staring everyone right in the face. You have one wing of the party, run by the likes of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, that's sitting on their asses while fascists destroy the country, and another wing of the party that's trying to breathe new life into this dying institution. You've got Pramila Jayapal leading the charge with the Trans Bill of Rights at a time when some Democrats are choosing to throw trans people under a bus in a desperate attempt to appeal to moderates, even though experts warn that the U.S. is in the early stages of an outright trans genocide. And then there's Khanna, who's arguably held Trump's feet to the fire more than any other Democrat with his relentless pursuit of the truth regarding the Epstein files, which is the exact kind of thing that Democratic Party voters want to see. In fact, a new Republic poll found that rank-and-file Democrats, they want the party to fight, obviously. And it's no surprise that AOC had the highest favorability rating of all Democrats in that same poll. And when you look at her popularity among younger Democrats, it's not even close. As Ryan Grimm put it, she's putting up Assad numbers with young Democrats with an 81% approval rating, which is 75 points higher than the supposed leader of the Democratic Party, Hakeem Jeffries. But compared to Chuck Schumer, who's at negative 19 points, Jeffries looks good by comparison, which isn't surprising, seeing as how Schumer thinks that his primary job, as he put it, is to keep the left pro-Israel. Oh, and he also was recently at a fundraiser bragging about how we've given more aid to Israel under his leadership than ever before. So the reason why Democrats like Jeffries and Schumer are so unpopular is because they very clearly don't represent us, and they really don't try to hide that fact. I mean, Jeffries does at least a little bit, but Chuck Schumer's just kind of like, I don't care about anything but Israel. Like, they represent foreign governments and large multinational corporations and not us, and everybody can see that, whereas people like AOC and Khanna and Jayapal and Sanders and Mamdani and Mejia and others, they have a clear, cohesive vision for the future and a desire to represent the people, and most importantly, they have concrete solutions to the country's most pressing problems. They all support Medicare for all, free healthcare at the point of service. They all oppose genocide. They all want to abolish ICE. And while I have my disagreements with them here and there, especially on the issue of Israel, I think it's obvious that they are very clearly the future of the party compared to the moderate wing of the party who is driving the entire institution into the ground. But I say they're the future wing of the party, assuming the party and country is even going to have a future, because the milquetoast centrism and neoliberalism that the Democratic establishment has offered voters is why we are in a fascist regime at this point. So it may be too late. But fascists would have never been able to control the country in the first place if Democrats actually offered voters something to vote for and got them off of their asses to vote for them. And AOC explained at a recent town hall in Germany that the predicament that we're in today is a direct result of people's material conditions being ignored for far too long, not just by Democrats, to be fair, by Republicans as well. But when people become so desperate, they become susceptible to radicalization. And that's why you see movements like right-wing populism, aka fascism, emerge. And I think she explained this beautifully.
The ascent of populist movements is telling us that governments have strayed too far from being responsive to the working class. And so populist movements can all have, they are mechanisms of delivery. And it really matters what they deliver. When you have economic stagnation for the working class and GDP is growing, it is an injustice. And one path and one story is, they both, frankly, need to provide a prescription of why and who is causing this. One direction is we are going to blame this on the vulnerable in society, on immigrants, on people of different gender identities, on a cultural or the educated and an anti-intellectualist movement. That's the stuff that right-wing populist movements are made of. And that, of course, is all done as a distraction from the truth, which is that it is economic elites that are taking the lion's share of growth for themselves and leaving crumbs for the working class. So the alternative to the lie, which is that it is the most vulnerable in society that is doing this, the alternative is a populist movement that tells the truth. A populist movement that says, this is an injustice. You are being screwed over. And that story is not a cultural one, but a class one. And that it is a class one.
And that's what the Democratic Party establishment has failed to realize. When things are bad, people get desperate and they start looking for scapegoats. And right-wing populists give them the scapegoats that they're looking for. They'll tell voters it's trans people and immigrants who are the cause of all of their problems. And that resonates with desperate dumbfuck Americans because Democrats aren't offering them an alternative solution. They're not saying, hey, here's our scapegoat, even though the answer to who their scapegoat is pretty obvious. It's the billionaires. That's the obvious and factual counter to the scapegoating that we see of marginalized communities. It's obviously the Epstein class who bought the government and got politicians to funnel money from you to them. There's a reason why their wealth is growing while everyone else is getting more poor. It is the billionaires. They are the cause of most of our problems because our capitalist system has allowed them to have more power than even the government itself. But Democrats have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, seeing as how they benefit from the status quo. Hence why all of their solutions are nothing more than incremental and uninspiring bullshit, because as long as they are less bad than Republicans and they manage our increasingly authoritarian police state a little more responsibly and humanely, then that's all they need to do. Just be electorally viable enough to win. But on that note, Jeffries was asked about why he won't lead the charge on abolishing ICE, even though that is the most easiest political win ever. And as you're going to see, he can't answer that. In fact, it's not that he can't answer it. He completely shits the bed when asked that question.
The latest polls came out this week, AP polls. Over 60% of Americans now disapprove of ICE. That means in 3 weeks, it's gone from 30% to 60%. Now, if I may, I'm going to be a bit blunt here. Leaders lead. And what we've seen is people are impressionable. If you lead on something, people will follow. It seems the wind is behind your back for the first time ever. ICE has a history. CPP has a history of terrorizing Black and brown communities. People are asking themselves, why are we, our taxpayer dollars, paying for masked, lawless men to terrorize our communities, kidnap people, take children, and kill Americans? So I ask you, and I'm doing a following up to Joy, because I want an answer to this. You said you want to rein in ICE. I'm talking about the long term now. Why not lead and say abolish ICE? Because what you're telling us is you want our taxpayer dollars to pay for a lawless masked armed agency to continue terrorizing our cities. And I'm trying to figure out how you, as a leader, can be telling Americans that their taxpayer dollars should be going to ICE.
I don't understand anything that you just said When
I
I've
spoke
made,
English.
when I don't understand anything that you've just said to me, when I've made clear that taxpayer dollars should be used to make life more affordable for the American people, not brutalize or kill them. That's the whole reason we're in this fight right now. That's the whole reason the DHS is getting ready to shut down. That's
So
the whole
abolish
reason
ICE.
why
You agree
we are
with me and Joy.
voting.
Abolish ICE.
Listen, I'm going to use the language that I want to use. You can use the language that you want to use.
Wouldn't want to be too bold there, because if you abolish ICE, then the private prison industry and surveillance merchants like Palantir, who profit off of ISIS terrorism, might lose money, and you just can't have that. So if you propose something that's too offensive, then the corporate overlords that run the country might not donate to your next campaign, and they might even spend money against you in a primary. So it's best to just, I guess, tuck your tail between your legs and do the bare minimum to get voters off your back. I mean, this is why Democrats are so unpopular. That answer encapsulates why nobody likes them. Because they've completely been castrated by large multinational corporations who profit off of cruelty. And you see it. It's why they can't give a coherent answer or present a coherent vision. And let's be clear, Hakeem Jeffries is not an idiot. He knows what his base wants. He knows it would be a huge dub for Democrats if they ran on abolishing ICE and Medicare for all. But he is choosing to abandon the popular position, or not even consider adopting the popular position, because he knows that would put him directly at odds with his corporate donors who pay him to keep things the same. It's why the first constituency that he met with after the last election was Silicon Valley oligarchs, as opposed to young people and Arab Americans that the Democratic Party lost, because he thought that it was best to mend fences with corporations as opposed to human beings that felt let down by the party. So given how they've been captured entirely by large multinational corporations, their only option is to try to appeal to right-wing voters and be diet Republicans, because that's the only way that they can keep the gravy train rolling. If they become too progressive like AOC or Khanna, then they might lose the money that they feel they need to have in order to be electorally viable. Now, contrast what Hakeem Jeffries just said, his answer, with the progressives in the party who aren't tethered to the party's corporate overlords, and you can really see the difference. It's night and day. AOC hasn't just led the charge on abolishing ICE. In fact, she popularized that position with her first campaign in 2018, but she also put her own ass on the line to challenge Trump's fascism.
I represent one of the most immigrant-dense, diverse communities in the world. And so I knew that they had a target on our back. And so I immediately started organizing Know Your Rights sessions, closed doors, for mixed status families, for people who wanted to stand up for their neighbors, legal education, and legal defense. And we started educating people on their rights. If ICE knocks on your door, you do not have to let them in unless you have a judicial warrant. Things like this. If they try to come into your hospital, if they try to come into your school, you have tools, legal recourse of resistance. And at that time, the acting director of ICE went on television and threatened me with jail. He said that he was going to examine and explore a criminal referral of me to the Department of Justice, accusing me of illegally harboring immigrants or providing aid or what have you. And he did that in order to get me to stop. And sure, when you talk to the lawyers and people who are most cautious, their advice may be protect yourself. But instead, in January or February, whenever it was at that time, I stood up and I went back on television and I said, make me. I dare you. I dare you. Take me away. And what happened? Quiet, whimpering withdrawal of what they were doing.
So AOC proved that these fascists are paper tigers, and if politicians like her and Khanna didn't exist, there'd be functionally no congressional opposition to fascism. But here's a dirty little secret that they don't want you to know. A lot of Democrats don't entirely disagree with Republicans. Don't get me wrong. The worst Democrat is still preferable to me than the best Republican, so I'm not trying to create a false equivalence. But if you removed Trump from the equation, Centrist Democrats would agree more with the median congressional Republican than any progressive. Not on social issues, of course, but when it comes to the economy, when it comes to foreign policy, there really isn't that much disagreement between both parties. Democrats didn't necessarily disagree with Trump overthrowing Maduro. They just opposed the way that he did it. They wanted him to get congressional approval, but they probably would have given it to him if he asked for it. You know, they don't necessarily oppose deportations per se. They just oppose the way that Trump is doing it. They don't like it to be a big spectacle. And since Democrats are always chasing Republicans to the right, Republicans are becoming more extreme to distance themselves from Democrats who are kind of nipping at their heels. Take immigration, for example. The Republican Party went from Reagan begrudgingly granting amnesty to millions of immigrants, yes, that Ronald Reagan, to the party of mass deportation and concentration camps. And rather than offering an alternative to that, Democrats have just followed Republicans off the proverbial cliff. Case in point.
Back in December of 23, I've been trying to just warn my party, saying the border's a disaster. The Democrats were saying, oh, no, it's all good. Everything's okay. And I tried to warn, saying, if you don't do this, we're going to burn for that. And now here we are now, and now they are living in the backlash for those things. For me, it's always secure our border. Every nation must do those things. And why can't we agree we have to round up every single criminal and deport them? Send them back.
Now, I get it. It's Fetterman. He also said in that same interview that Trump hasn't violated a single court order, even though he's done 90 just in his state of Pennsylvania alone. But he's not the only one that's living in that false reality where Biden supposedly had open borders. Now, not only did Biden not have open borders when he was president, he deported millions and millions of immigrants, most of which were under COVID-era Title 42 expulsions. And Biden really wasn't unique there. And I'm actually going to let Hillary Clinton, of all people, burst Fetterman's bubble.
More people were deported under my husband and Barack Obama without killing American citizens and without putting children into detention camps than were in the first Trump term or this first year of Trump's second term.
She's not wrong, but it goes to show you that Democrats want to implement a lot of Trump's inhumane policies, albeit in a more performatively humane way. And you want to know what Republicans call these draconian anti-immigrant policies imposed by Democrats that Hillary Clinton described? They called them open borders. So as hard as they try, Democrats will never, ever be able to beat Republicans at their own anti-immigrant game. And trust me, they're trying hard. Just listen to what else Hillary Clinton said in that same conference.
There is a legitimate reason to have a debate about things like migration. It went too far. It's been disruptive and destabilizing, and it needs to be fixed in a humane way with secure borders that don't torture and kill people.
I mean, yes, less torture and murder is objectively good, but the claim that immigration went too far is a white supremacist lie that's being told by a Democrat that's still relatively popular. The only crisis that we have insofar as immigration is concerned is that we don't have a functioning immigration system with actual pathways to legal residency and citizenship. And instead, we choose to respond to immigration in the same way that we respond to every other issue we have in this country, by criminalizing it and throwing more police at the problem. Neither party has an interest in actually fixing the fucking system because the Epstein class benefits from a perpetual underclass of immigrant wage slaves who can't ask for better working conditions out of fear of deportation. But whether politicians are going to admit this or not, the solution to an aging population and declining birth rates is more immigration, not less, because immigrants collectively contribute trillions and trillions of dollars to the economy. They contribute more than they take, by the way, not to mention it is very expensive to be cruel to immigrants. As the Washington Post reports, it costs $40 million just to send a handful of immigrants to countries that they didn't come from, and they end up in their home countries anyway. So, we are wasting money being cruel, even though these people are a net benefit to our country. But you'd never know this if you only listen to politicians, because their billionaire donors have a vested interest in making you believe that immigrants are the cause of all of our problems and not them. But we're trapped in this cycle where our foreign policy destabilizes and destroys Latin American countries for profit. We'll then subsequently see an influx in immigration. Some immigrants will be placed in hotels temporarily to process the overabundance of new asylum claims we see as a result of our destruction of their countries, so that way they're not sleeping in streets. And then images of them getting basic necessities to survive are exploited by hate merchants to make it seem as if immigrants, not billionaires, are leeching off of the system. Oh, and Democrats are deliberately importing them also so that way they can vote. Like it's a whole scheme. It's a great replacement scheme that's now mainstream. It used to be, just a Nazi lie, but now the great replacement conspiracy theory is mainstream in the Republican Party, and I think most normal Americans probably believe it. These lies are effective in part because we never see it challenged, not by the media, not by Democrats, at least centrist Democrats. The handful of progressives challenge it, but centrist Democrats aren't challenging it because, they never want to make it seem as if they're pro-immigration in any way, shape, or form, because even if the country is becoming pro-immigrant as a result of seeing Trump's cruelty, they know that the tides will turn again, and they don't want to be on the record saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat immigrants like complete garbage. Like, we should treat them like garbage, but just not complete garbage. Like, of course, they're going to condemn the Trump regime's performative cruelty, but they have no interest in actually changing the status quo because, again, that would offend their corporate donors who profit off of cruelty. Disaster capitalism is a thing, folks. And on the subject of their donors and cruelty, Wajahat Ali also asked Jeffries about the blood money that's being doled out by AIPAC to the party. And predictably, his answer was dog shit.
And I remember the YouGov poll that came out after the 2024 election said the main reason why Democrats stayed at home was their displeasure with the genocide that's happening in Gaza. And what we've seen is AIPAC. AIPAC now has spent $2 million attacking a moderate-leaning Democrat, Tom Malinowski, a Democrat, in the special House election in New Jersey 11th District. And we got a progressive Latina, Representative Mejia, who won, who, by the way, says abolish ICE. My question for you, if you're looking for accountability, if you're looking for change, shouldn't Democrats stop taking money from AIPAC that has spent so much money against Democrats?
Well, listen, everyone's going to have to make their individual decision. My view as it relates to Democratic incumbents, first of all, is that I will continue to stand by every single one of them, whether that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the one hand, or the most conservative, moderate Democrat on the other, who's sitting in the Trump district and at all points in between, right? That's what I'm going to do as House Democratic leader. Now, in terms of how people individually fundraise, I'm proud of the fact that my average contribution amongst the millions of dollars that I've been working hard to raise for my own reelection that I use to help elect Democrats in other parts of the country is $27 per contributor. That's my average contribution. That's probably the lowest in the Congress. And so now everyone is going to raise money from their own constituents in different ways, and their own constituents are going to have a variety of different perspectives on a variety of different issues. But make no mistake, there's a big difference between Democrats and Republicans, and we're seeing that right now. I know some people like to project otherwise. How one can see the horrors of what has been inflicted on the American people since January 20th of last year and conclude otherwise, or want to try to suggest that there's no difference in one's quality of life. People know that their life is being made markedly worse because of who's in office right now, both in the White House and the House.
Well, Representative, respectfully,
we're determined to do something about that.
Just a quick follow-up. So that means, will you stop taking money from AIPAC?
I'm going to continue to raise money in the same way that I've been raising it, where the average contribution from millions of people across the country is $27 per contributor.
You can see in his answer that the game he's trying to play is so obvious. We've seen this for decades now. Look at how bad the Republicans are. Look at how bad Donald Trump is. They're making your life worse. All of this is objectively true. But that's all the more reason why you need to propose an alternative. Why not propose sweeping changes to counter everything that the Republican Party is doing? Why not embrace popular policies that'll give your party majority support and not just plurality support, and make the fascists irrelevant? Like, you can run away with this if you chose to do it. We know what the answer is. We know what you need to do to become popular, but he's not going to do it because he's being paid to uphold the system and not change it. So centrist Democrats, they think that they just have to do better enough than Republicans to get enough voters to vote for them. And the sad truth is that they might be right. It's why the pendulum always swings back and forth every 4 to 8 years. Republicans fuck up the country. Democrats come in. They don't undo the damage caused by Republicans, and they leave Americans disappointed only to lose the next election to Republicans. And they come in, fuck up the country even more. And the cycle just repeats again and again and again. It's a death spiral at this point. And progressives like AOC and others are desperately trying to get us out of this cycle, while the old guard of the party fights them at every step of the way to keep us in this cycle because it benefits them. For example, Nancy Pelosi is planning to use her influence to boost Gavin Newsom's 2028 presidential campaign, who is one of the most corporate captured Democrats since Bill Clinton, who opposes a wealth tax and literally gave state oligarchs a prepaid cell phone with his number on it so that way they can reach him at all times of day. Meanwhile, Obama, whose administration was also captured by corporations, is pretending like the party is struggling primarily because they're all too old. Don't get me wrong, gerontocracy is an issue for sure, but the core problem isn't their age. It's that the way they think is aged. This neoliberal strategy of triangulation helped usher in this era of fascism in the first place, and putting a shiny new bow on neoliberalism with a new face and by calling it abundance isn't going to deliver us from fascism. But they know this. They're not stupid. They know what they need to do to defeat Republicans permanently. So let's not pretend like the debate about the future of the Democratic Party is happening in good faith. There is no debate as far as I'm concerned. It's over. They know their ticket to victory is progressivism. The only question is whether or not there's enough voters who are now willing to kick out the leaders who are impeding progress. And if we have free and fair elections, which again, I'm still not sure that that's going to be the case, voters can make sure that the good side wins, at least when it comes to Democratic Party primaries, by voting out these corporate clowns. But I mean, if for some reason things go south and Gavin Newsom emerges as the nominee in 2028 or some other corpo shitbag, Democratic voters that supported him over the progressive options are almost going to be as complicit as Trump supporters with the country's downfall at this point, because by now we all should know that the antidote to right-wing populism is left-wing populism, like it or not. You might not agree with progressives, but that's how you beat Republicans. They are more electable. So if you affirmatively vote for the wing of the party responsible for the material conditions that led to fascism in the first place, especially during a primary when you have other progressive alternatives, you're either unwittingly or wittingly enabling fascism at this point. Like, I'll be frank, you are just enabling fascism if you are still supporting these corporate Democrats in primaries. So I'll make it easier for you. If you're still struggling to figure out which candidates are bullshitting you and which aren't, just look at their campaign contributions, see if they're taking AIPAC money or money from corporations, listen to what they do and don't say, and more importantly, if you see a candidate that's really captivating young people, as was the case with Bernie Sanders, vote for that candidate if you want to permanently disempower fascists and not just hit the snooze button again on fascism for another 4 years.